Here we go. We are live, apparently, which is more than I can say for most of the characters in these movies we're going to talk about tonight, because we are talking about a pair of serial killer films. Yes, we're doing another installment of a series that my good friend and co-host here, Jeff York of the Establishing Shot, getting the plugs in early. He came up with was it either late last year or early this year? I can't keep track of time, but it's called "If You'll Like, You'll Love." And tonight we're going to be talking about two movies, one very recent, one not so recent, but both in kind of the same vein. Tonight, yes, if you like, we are going to argue, if you like Longlegs, the new film from Osgood Perkins, you'll love Michael Mann's Manhunter from 1986, which folks may know or may not know is a prequel to The Silence of the Lambs, the Academy Award-winning, not a horror movie, thriller from 1990. So, we're gonna get into it. And before we do, I've already introduced Jeff. Thank you very much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
We also have, we have Katie Glidewell, the bald in front, aka the blonde in front, with her Manhunter VHS. You got to show this because folks might think it's a DVD, but no, this is an old school giant box VHS.
No, that's old clamshell there. That's some serious. That's sweetness right there.
Wow,
that is really nice.
That is some serious sweetness.
By the way, that's not the original art that they used for the poster. They changed that numerous times, probably trying to make it more appealing because it bombed when it first ran. But that's funny that they changed the whole color and the sort of look of it for the video release.
I will say, I know where I got this when Blockbuster shut down. Most of its stores, actually all of its stores in Chicago, I believe I got this previously owned.
I've got.
Nice.
I think I've got the VHS, but it's just got the Hollywood Video sleeve on it. That was before Hollywood Video. Well, that was when Hollywood Video croaked. So, but yeah.
Now, wait. Just to clarify, Mark, it didn't have the regular sleeve on it. Did you get that from behind the beaded curtain at Hollywood Video? Because that's a different edition of Manhunter.
No,
We're not
no. It wasn't that.
About next scene. Yeah.
It wasn't that version of Manhunter. No.
And we are. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, no, I had gotten a huge lot of boxes of VHS, and about a third of them were ones from when Hollywood Video closed. So, but some of them are interesting. That's where I've got Cobra on VHS and Shark on VHS. So, okay,
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah,
well,
there's a lot of interesting ones.
I take it you got to the sale late.
Well, no, this I found secondhand. So
let's see. Oh, I'm just sorry. I got a notification here on StreamYard. People love to see this when we talk like technical stuff. Apparently, I need a premium account to go live on X now, which is awesome. I don't know. So I guess we won't be doing that, but who cares? Anyway, Mark, the Movie Man Krawczak, you were talking about VHSs and Hollywood Video and all that good stuff.
Yes.
You are the man behind the Spoiler Room podcast and Special Mark Productions. So welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Where do we begin? Probably, I was sitting in the movie theater on Saturday night waiting for the show to begin, and there was nothing going on because we were still dealing with the Coke commercials and Maria Menounos and all of her nonsense. So I pull out my phone and I was like, what's going on Twitter? And immediately I saw the big news that everyone's been talking about ever since. I'm like, alrighty. And then the lights went down and it was time to watch Longlegs. So that set the table for the mood I was in.
So the death of Shannon Doherty set the table for the mood that you were in on Saturday?
No, I think I found that out. Maybe I found that out on Sunday. I was late to the party on that one. But no, I was like, I don't, is the world going to be in embers by the time I get out of the theater? I have no idea. But I was certainly destroyed by Longlegs, not in a good way. But I couldn't quite put my finger on what I didn't like so much about Longlegs until I watched Manhunter. So I think this is kind of the perfect pairing. Let's go around the table and do something a little bit different. Instead of our high-level opinions, I want to find out what people think of Osgood Perkins, because I think this might be my first Oz Perkins movie. I I wanted to see the Black Coat's Daughter, but I missed that. At least I don't think I saw it. And he did a few other ones, but this is like his big kind of a breakout, like mainstream thing. It's the biggest movie Neon's done. Neon and A24 are just killing it this year with between Maxine and then this coming out within a couple weeks of each other. But let's see, Katie, let's start with you. What do you make of Oz Perkins? Is he? Let's just say I'd never seen any of his movies and I hadn't seen this one. Sell me on Oz Perkins.
Oz Perkins is all about the atmosphere and especially the detail that he has with the exteriors and the precision with the performances. Like every performance that I've seen, Black Coat's Daughter, especially Gretel and Hansel, that was one of my top 10 horror films when it came out. Loved it, loved everything about it, bought the soundtrack. Sophia Lillis, loved her. And it's like you really see these people doing things that I hadn't seen, like especially with the Black Coat's Daughter. You've got Kiernan Shipka, who recently was off of Mad Men. You've got Emma Roberts also doing that. I feel like that was sort of, I know she did Scream 4 before that, but this was more of like a meteor role that actually showcased like what she could do in this genre. I think that going from that to this, it's very similar with the aesthetic, the also the music that's incorporated with it. It's not overbearing, but it definitely is a key factor in a number of these scenes and setting the mood. You know, I think he really appreciates these female performances that I think are highlighted in all three of his films that have the protagonist, and they're not the victim. They definitely are like these warrior women who, you know, they've got their challenges and all that stuff. But I mean, they're going to, spoiler, they're going to be there to the end and you're going to see what happens. And I look forward to seeing what he does next. Of the three, unfortunately, Longlegs is my number 3 of the 3 of these. But it did have one of the funniest scenes in a film that I've seen this year where I laughed out loud, so loud in the theater because I just thought it was the funniest freaking thing. And I know they do a lot of stuff. It's like, oh, you know, it has so many similarities to Silence of the Lambs, all that stuff. This one kind of does, this scene. And yet no one talks about it. I couldn't even find the actor's name.
Tell us what it is.
Huh?
Wait,
Tell us what it is, because I didn't laugh once. I'd love to know where you howled with laughter.
Where I laughed?
Here,
oh, yeah. I mean,
I'm putting the banner on just in case people are coming in. I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but go ahead.
So when Micah Monroe, Agent Lee Harker, and Blair Underwood, Agent Carter, when they go to the asylum where, Carrie Ann Camera is, the asylum director is talking to them and saying, it's like, yeah, it's just been so crazy. Like she was catatonic this whole time. And then she gets a visitor and she's just talking away. And then you guys come. So that was just crazy. And then they're like, well, did you write down who came in? Like, oh yeah, we had it down. And it says Agent Lee Harker. And that's like, so do you like check IDs when people come in? And he just like looks at him like, yeah, that's a really good idea. We should do that. I died because everyone, it's like, I didn't even know anything about the whole similar. I mean, one, you want to know why this movie is doing so well? Freaking Neon. You guys, everyone who's watching this is the way you do a trailer. I don't watch trailers. This trailer blared into my face during Abigail, and yet I knew not what the hell I was going to see when it came out, but I knew I wanted to watch it. That is what more studios need to do. This marketing, kudos to Neon. Whatever they did, whoever edited the trailer, that person needs to be on. You need to lock that person down. Make sure they do every single film that you have, because that is what got people in the seats, because you knew nothing of what the hell you were, sorry, I almost cursed, what the hell you were going to see. But yeah, with all the Silence of the Lambs references and stuff like that, I mean, it's kind of. There's a couple movies that you can see, but it's set in the 90s. That's what it is. It's dark. It's brown. You know, you've got Clinton on the wall, so you know what the era is. But that little segment right there, when I think of Silence of the Lambs and how much of a schmuck the guy who runs the asylum and always like to have that guy be like, yeah, that's a really good idea. We should do. I'm like, dude, this is fucking hilarious. Like, that was amazing. I know no one else is going to like put a big emphasis on that, but that stood out to me. And then Kiernan Shipka blew me away. I did not know who she was like the first maybe 10, 15 seconds. And then she did something where she raised, and I'm like, holy shit, look at you, little girl from Mad Men. You are freaking acting your ass off. Like, damn. Amazing. And that's probably, those are two of my highlights. And then Blair Underwood at the end.
Oh, at the end. Okay.
Yes. Because of what he says there, that's very much like John Hawkes in Winter's Bone.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, this is a study in how we can watch the same movie and have completely different reactions.
Oh, yeah.
The director of the mental institution, I picked up on that line, but at that point I was so checked out because his character does not fit in this movie, and it also doesn't fit the time. Like,
exactly.
Well, right, but we're talking about a movie that's supposed to establish a mood and an atmosphere and some degree of realism in order to latch on. But when he shows up in that like weird purple Joker's business outfit, suit, and he's like Nathan Lane out of the birdcage, I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? And then it's such a boneheaded thing that line is like, oh yeah, we really should check IDs. It's straight out of a comedy.
Yeah.
There's nothing really else. I mean, you mentioned it yourself. This is a bit of punctuation in this sea of misery, which, is fine, a tension breaker. But to me, it just didn't make any sense. And I was more than mildly annoyed because I didn't like the character to begin with. And then Blair Underwood, I think I liked him throughout the movie. I think it was Robert Daniels from Ebert.com had remarked that like he's kind of the secret MVP of this film. Mm-hmm. And I think he's right. Because I haven't seen him in forever. The man does not age since he's been on LA Law. I swear, the same era of Manhunter. But by the end of the film, I think they did him dirty. They gave him an opportunity to stretch, but as far as like that whole like third act reveal of what is going on, I was like, same thing with Maxine. These movies are coming out; they're period pieces. They're from notable like new-ish horror directors, and they can't write their way out of a paper bag to save their third act. So yeah, I was with Blair Underwood, but I was kind of soured on him by the end. Not him, but just the material.
Well, there's just a line he says at the end that it again reminded me of John Hawkes in Winter's Bone, where he says something and it's like, oh damn, I know what that means, and oh wow, that was just real cold. That was just
was cold. That the join me in the kitchen thing?
That was like,
the follow-up line after that. Yeah.
No, yeah, the follow-up when...
What was it? I don't remember.
So when the husband and wife are on the couch and it's like, I'm going to go to the kitchen. And the wife's like, I'm going to go to the kitchen. I'll be right back. And Blair Underwood is like, yeah, I'm going to be right back. You're still going to be in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's when, and after everything going, it's like, oh no. Oh, but at that point, I don't blame... Agent Carter. I blame more of Agent Harker at what happens after that, because it's like, yeah, come on, you had one job, to try and do something, and but there's a lot of things regarding this movie that I felt like the way they made her in the beginning and her gifts and stuff like that, and why she was assigned to this case, and then that kind of didn't really go anywhere with the gifts. And it's like, cool. Okay. Yeah. I was really looking forward to maybe diving a little bit more, seeing where she was going to go with that, but cool. No, that's okay. That's all right.
But it's really not though. I mean, like,
oh no, it's not.
But it's not about her gifts. It's not about her gifts at all. It's about the fact that she was the girl who was the victim. That's what she's all responding to. She intuitively knows it because she's been experiencing it, and she experienced it there. All the intuition, all that kind of stuff that we're giving her as a brilliant FBI person is not, that's a red herring. The real reason is they don't want to tell you right off the bat that everything that she's doing has to do with the years and years and years of being experienced with it.
Well,
so
no, I know.
I think we're getting off.
Yeah, I know that that's the thing, but we get that later on, and I actually would have liked it if she would have had psychic abilities. That would have been a lot.
Yeah, but that's almost the cliche. See, I think that's where maybe Perkins is having a little fun with the genre. Is there always some really brilliant FBI guy like Will Graham is in Manhunter, but that's where this one is different. It's a misdirect. I think to your original question, Ian, about whether Osgood Perkins is a good director, I think yes, he is. I think he has a lot of insight into what makes dread versus scares, and I think dread is more valuable in horror than scares, because scares are often cheap, or they're jumpy, or they have to really work hard to make us sort of react, so they're a lot of times a little bit visceral and or low-hanging fruit. But I think the way he frames everything, the sound design, I mean, everybody's in a square, kind of like we are now, and there's all this space around them to isolate them, or to God knows what can come in from behind them or around them and stuff like that. So you're constantly wondering, like, is this just to show that they're lonely or make me afraid because something might come out of the periphery, which is pretty smart filmmaking. He also, I think, weaves in sound and effects and the score to, continue this sort of sense of dread. I think, though, to your point, I think Katie was getting at it too. The script is a problem here because, and I think it is in a lot of the horror movies today, and it's frankly, I think it's been that way probably since the beginning of time. Horror movies have the wonderful world of window dressing, sometimes more than other things, because the dark nights, the shadows, the score that really works as a character in the movie. What's the last rom-com you could pick where the score mattered? Very few, really. It's the chemistry between the two leads. But with horror, you've got cinematography, sound design, what you don't show. Osgood Perkins is very good what you don't show. That first scene is very terrifying by seeing it from the kid's point of view, and you don't get him fully into it. And then he just dips down for a second, and I saw people blanch back like, holy shit, it's Raymond Burr realizing that Grace Kelly is being watched by Jimmy Stewart across the way. That's pretty effective. That's pretty good direction. But to the original point, I think maybe the difference between these two films and why I recommended Manhunter one is Manhunter is a great script, and it is a very intellectual, smart story between a lot of characters who are smart and a lot of characters who are afraid and not sure how to deal with all that they know, which is great. Here, I think it's a mood piece, and that's fine. But at some point when you have a mystery, especially where it's an FBI procedural, you want a little bit more of an explanation. And I don't think the explanation here is particularly satisfying. To Katie's point about whether Harker is really a good FBI agent or not, I think she's got some good intuition because she knows this so well. But at the end, when it breaks down into this weird sort of mumbo jumbo of Satanism and different personalities and stuff, I think it's a cheat. I think it's a little cheap too, because I don't know if the film has been really going that way. I think if anything, the killer is just crazy, and he's kind of his own crazy without having to point at, oh, the bad church goes along with it, or see Satan and the Christian thing is all kind of hand in hand, which is, I think, a little bit of a misnomer here. But to your original question, is he a good director? Yes, I think he is. Now he needs better material to direct.
Fair enough, because he wrote and directed this.
Yes.
Has he written and directed all of his features?
I'm not sure if he did Gretel and Hansel.
Let me.
Well, while you're looking that up, Katie, thank you. Mark, jumping on Oz Perkins. Are you a fan?
Well, I hope my patrons don't mind me being on the show, because we did a full show on just Longlegs, and it was a very spirited conversation between me, Ray, and Lamont. As far as Oz Perkins goes, I've only experienced his one other film. I did not see Blackcoat's Daughter, but I did see Gretel and Hansel. And I almost, if I'm remembering my review correctly, I meant to go back and watch my review on Gretel and Hansel. I enjoyed everything in Gretel and Hansel up until the very end, I think, was where it lost me just a little bit. But overall, I really loved Gretel and Hansel. I like he can set up atmosphere better than a lot of directors out there. He can set up mood. He keeps the audience uncomfortable with the just the the great subtle. There's a lot of subtlety in in what he does, which works really well with good horror. But I think, especially with Longlegs, it's the scripts. I almost wish he would take a route that some other directors do after their first couple, is they do other people's material and not their own, because M. Night fell in that. I think actually M. Night's a very solid director. I think M. Night needs to direct something other than his own material because he's too close to it. And I think Oz Perkins runs into that. Again, the only experience I had before this was Gretel and Hansel, and I loved everything up to a point. And Longlegs is the exact same thing. I was loving this film up until the third act. When we get to this third act and they're trying to be creative, it was almost an M. Night twist of sorts, in that it does this 90-degree angle, and people go, well, Mark, you like weird movies. I'm like, I don't need my hand held, and I don't mind the 90-degree angle, but the first 2/3 of this film was so well done as a straight crime thriller. You didn't need the gimmick at the end, because this was a gritty, dark, disturbing crime thriller. And when we get to the interrogation scene with her and Longlegs, it's from that point forward, this thing really falls apart to where there's too many questions that open up with the twist. Just too many. Before that, it was solid. I'm like, okay, we're just like Manhunter to this point. Until you get to that interrogation scene, it is just like Manhunter. You've got a criminal. You've got a very smart, elusive bad guy. You've got a very smart, FBI agent trying on his heels, trying to think like. But then they do this like, oh no, it's this. And then you're just like, that's a completely different film. Do that separate if you want to,
or to that point, Mark, do that first.
Or do that.
I mean,
first.
I think the problem with this movie is that it wants to be a procedural, and it isn't. It's really kind of a fake out, because the gist of it is all in that last reveal, and then the horror thing, the Satanistic thing with Blair Underwood's character is a complete botch as far as I'm concerned. But I think if they had gotten to the point a little bit faster, maybe halfway through, and then examined her more, because I think ultimately at the end of the day, what I think is sad about her character and kind of moving about it is she is a victim her entire life, her entire career, from this being a child. She's not this savvy, intuitive, great FBI agent. She's that because she lived it, and she's been living it for 20 years. And it reminded me of the Zodiac tagline, which I think is one of the greatest taglines ever for a movie poster. There are many ways you can lose your life to a serial killer. And that's what she did. And I think that, and the revelation of her mother, again, we're talking spoilers, I think is the story here, more of the story. And they kind of rush through that and then get into this weird thing with Blair Underwood's character, which doesn't seem right for everything we've seen. But I think all the stuff of her tacking stuff on the walls and doing all those cliches, and, they spread everything out in front of them. I mean, we saw that in North Country and people were laughing about it, because it's like, how many times can you do that in a movie? And Jodie Foster wasn't even going off that stuff half the time. It was more intuitive stuff that was giving him problems out there in the North Country of True Detective. I just think that he's into this weird feeling, this mood, this tragedy in a way. I mean, I think there's a tragedy around all of this, including starting out with that little girl, and then that's her, and then it's these other families that somehow, they're being cajoled into helping him and stuff. What's all that about? I think that's the story, and I think they keep wanting to push it into, oh, she's this intrepid detective like she's Sherlock Holmes, and I just think they missed that better opportunity.
Well, and they had interesting things too, like Mr. Downstairs and Longlegs. And when they did the Mr. Downstairs, I was like, ooh, where's this going? I like that. And then it's like, you're missing Ruby. I'm like, okay, what's happening? And it's like, cool. You just, okay. So we heard that once, and that, okay, cool. Jesus Christ, why do you keep doing this to me? It's like, I'm getting really excited. And then and then that was it. Okay, cool. That's okay. Cool.
You see, I mean, that's the thing. I knew you were being sarcastic, but I was furious by the time this movie
Oh
was
no,
over.
I was mad. I'm like,
Well, no, but my anger started from the very beginning.
Hmm.
Now, Jeff, you mentioned, we were talking about atmosphere and suspense instead of jump scares. I disagree. I think the atmosphere, everyone's talking about the mood and the cinematography and stuff. To me, I mean, I've seen this all before. And I wasn't scary. I was never tense. And then that opening scene where you see Nicolas Cage and like you can just barely see the bottom of his chin, and then he like swoops down into the frame. We open the movie with a damn jump scare. And part of this is a meta problem because I've long considered Nicolas Cage to have given up acting unofficially. There are a lot of Nicolas Cage fans out there, a lot of diehards. And the problem is they recommend everything he's in. And not everything he's in is good, and he's not good in everything he's in. And here I think he's particularly terrible.
Really?
Yes, because I had heard so much about him being this character in this amazing like horror movie that I thought, okay, maybe he's going to play a serial killer and show some restraint, dare I say, give a performance. But no, what do we get? We get him behind the wheel of the car doing his rising voice and singing thing that he's been doing for half a decade. It's Al Pacino post Scent of a Woman, every film he's in. Okay, 90% of them. What does he do? He's dressed up in this garish fright pancake makeup with this weird prosthetic nose and deformed face. To what end? We don't find out. It's just like, oh, I thought I'd make him look like this, but he doesn't even look like a convincing human character. There's no explanation like, oh, he sold his soul to the devil and this warped his body and his mind. There's at a certain point in the film, and for me, it happened early on, I completely checked out because I kept thinking about Silence of the Lambs. I had not yet seen Manhunter, but watching this, I'm like, okay, so you've got the killer who's obsessed with like doing things with clothing down in his basement and everything is red. I'm like, yes, this is James Gumb from 35 years ago or whatever it was. Where's the nuance? Then we get all of a sudden during flashbacks, we're seeing this mysterious figure in a black veil with glowing eyes. I'm like, okay, great. Now we're into The Conjuring for some reason.
Yeah.
But
see, I think most of that is screenwriting. I mean,
no, I agree. But the thing is, for me, atmosphere is only supported by screenwriting. I think
in horror, atmosphere can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. But having said all that, I don't disagree with you on a lot of your points. I do think that he was, it was a little obvious on the nose casting to pick somebody like Nicolas Cage, but I thought he was effectively creepy here. And I think he was weird. And I like the fact that they didn't show him. I thought before they got to his face, the fact that he was just in this sort of dingy white, almost girl's winter coat from the 80s and junior high was scary and weird. And the more they showed him, the more, like he's banging his nose and blooding his skull and all that stuff. That's where it started to fall apart, and they didn't need that. And to be perfectly blunt, I don't want to necessarily rob us of Manhunter, but that's one of the reasons I thought it would be interesting to compare these, because ostensibly they have a lot of the same boxes that they're playing here, and yet at almost every level, Manhunter goes subtle and very nuanced. I mean, one of the things I loved about Manhunter versus this is, and I think to build off what you're just saying now, Ian, is you're introduced to Hannibal Lecter, and we know the way Anthony Hopkins has played him. And Hopkins said, look, he's been in the jail for 5 years. He has nothing but his voice. He doesn't have many visitors. So this is a performance. This is going to be his major production when he gets a visitor. But here it's kind of early, and Brian Cox plays him, and he's so matter of fact that it's terrifying. And he doesn't he almost seems to not do anything with the role, but everything he does with it is so great, and it's so subtle. Even Tom Noonan, a very subtle actor, even though he often plays oddball characters, when he's talking to Freddie Louds, played by Stephen Lang here, he's just talking like that. And you can see why maybe, Joan Allen would go out with him, because he's this quiet, sort of sensitive sounding man. And he's talking about all this. And then suddenly he bares those weird teeth and goes in for the bite. Jesus H. Christ, And I love the fact that Michael Mann had enough sense here. Like, let's keep it normal. Let's keep it straight. Let's keep these people smart. Let's keep them real. And then boom. I mean, even when they're trying to figure out what's been written on that toilet paper, they don't lose their minds. They don't lose their, shit. Dennis Farina in the Scott Glenn, Jack Crawford role is kind of a smart, practical, pragmatic. That's how I got to be the head here. I keep my head during shit like this. I love that about it. But when it explodes, it explodes. But most of it is
also he had the
very
benefit of
counter
being
to this,
but
which is good
you know,
comparison.
and I want to stay on Longlegs for a few minutes here, but
sorry.
no. I mean,
You said I was
bringing
co-host, so I just was taking over the show. My apologies.
but I mean, you bring up some good points. One thing I do want to sidestep on is we do have two Chicago Dennises. We have Dennis's Franz and Farina,
That's right.
they both play cops in 80s movies. But Dennis Farina shows how you do the non-obnoxious, I can take you seriously.
Right. Yeah, he was very good in this.
Yes, he was excellent. But let's just go back to Longlegs for a second. You know, the whole thing, the outfit that he's wearing, again, I'm thinking Silence of the Lambs. I'm like, okay, he is another ambiguously gendered, you know, troubled guy who is going to be a serial killer. I've seen this all before, and I've seen it done better. The other thing with this FBI agent, you know, you get the feeling that she's new or newer to the force. I mean, she's not very old, which is fine, except she makes a mistake that if I don't know how she passed training, how she got her badge.
I know exactly what you're talking. Go ahead. Sorry.
You're talking about the packet in the cabin?
Oh, I'm not talking about the packet in the cabin. I'm talking about her taking cover in front of a window where the bad guy is, who just shot her partner inside the apartment, and she puts her back up against the window where you can see her silhouette against where on the other side is supposedly the killer who just shot her partner. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ian. But
no, I mean that's of a piece. I think I blocked that out because I'm like, okay, I'll just forget this happened. The movie is only 3 minutes in. It can't
I'm
be
trying to help you get to
Manhunter
Manhunter here, Ian.
We'll get there soon. But no, the other, before we get to my thing involving the packet, I just want to talk about Micah Monroe. And I want to compare her to William Peterson's character in Manhunter. Two different characters, two different places in their lives. But William Peterson is allowed to play a flesh and blood human being who is troubled by things in his past. Micah Monroe is reduced to playing generic girl boss FBI agent that we saw it in Abigail. We've seen in all these different movies where their version of being assertive and being powerful is just to be bland, to do the thing where they're just kind of like blank stares in the face. Micah Monroe looked like she was constantly trying to pick a popcorn kernel out of her teeth without opening her mouth. She was like the entire movie. I'm like, what is this character? And later she's in her house in this remote cabin. It's at night. She hears a noise. She goes out to investigate. She comes back in and there's a packet on her desk. And inside the packet is a card from Longlegs. How do we know it's a card from Longlegs? Because after coming back into her house, after having seen someone in her house, she sits down to open up this package and read the card. And then she hears something like creaking in the back. I'm like, wait a second. You didn't go secure the rest of the house? You also didn't call anybody from local police to, I don't know, the FBI to say, the serial killer we've been looking for just left me a packet on my desk.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard people describe this movie as dreamlike, but this is just absurd.
Well, there's also the fact of after they find out, spoilers, folks, banner at the bottom, and I know we want to get to Manhunter, but after they find out that her mom is connected some way to Longlegs due to Longlegs' confession, she's still on the case. In fact, they send her out still on the case as an FBI agent with her a partner to go get her mom. Just those two by themselves. I'm like, this is supposed to be a very vicious serial killer, and you find out one of your agents' moms is connected to this case. How is she still on it? I'm not familiar with FBI. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, that's where how is she not a suspect? You know,
That's where they throw logic out the window. Those things, all those boxes that you're talking about, are unchecked because she isn't good. She isn't a good FBI agent, and we keep wanting her to be because we think she's supposed to be. She is morose, I think, and I think the argument I read in an interview with Osgood is that she is this victim. And that's what I saw there. But I think all the things you're asking for are part of the misdirect because we expect that here. But I think her character has gone into this trying to figure out her life. And she's morose and she's sad and she looks like she's got the kernel of popcorn in her tooth because she's the Walking Dead. She's a victim who's been a victim since 10 years old, and she still is at 30 years old or 28 or whatever the hell she is.
Well, but
and she's affected with her mother. But the more you buy into that, if you buy into that, that's the idea. And I think that was the intent. It doesn't make any sense that you would be doing any of those things or that Blair Underwood's Carter character would be, connected to all this too. It's like at some point you have to give up the procedural and turn it into something that's just either a waking nightmare or a mood piece or a morose sort of, mournful kind of essay on this Walking Dead girl.
Well, and then there's the question of is her behavior, and I think it was trying to be implied, and I said this on the Patreon episode too, is like, I don't need my hand held, okay? I don't mind getting my hand, but if you're going to go a 90-degree angle and go into the supernatural, we need a couple of rules established. You need some kind of structure, even a very basic one-line toss-off. I would accept that because you need something, because I think what is implied and what they were going for is, yes, she suffered the trauma, but part of it was because of the devil who was in the doll because she had her doll. And once her mom shot the doll, her mom says, "You're free." And suddenly she is like, more emotional and a little bit more animated once the mom shoots the head of the doll. And that thing at the end, though, you're right, she's not a bad FBI agent, because let me tell you, Clarice, when she busted into the room, sees the daughter cuddling up to the doll that looks like her, knowing the doll's connected in some way to either Satan or some bad thing, and seeing her boss act the way he does, Clarice would have tried to shoot it, and if she couldn't shoot it, fine. She would have grabbed the doll, took it outside, and smashed the shit out of it before Underwood ever took his wife to the kitchen. And the fact she even let her boss, knowing what was going to happen, go and not even plug him or try to restrain him or anything.
And why wouldn't she? At that point, why wouldn't she? See, that's the thing, though. I mean, it just falls apart because she's not even an agent anymore. She's not even a good victim relating to another victim. She's letting somebody else get killed so uselessly and unnecessarily just for one last death or two last deaths or how many it is.
Well, it reminded me a bit of The Ring with the VHS tape. I thought that's kind of where they were going. Like she had to bear witness to this family killing itself in order to perpetuate this curse, or maybe to save her mom from a damnation or something like that. But there was none of that. I again, at the end of this, I'm like, I don't know what I'm watching. And then of course we cut back to Nicolas Cage in the interrogation room saying "Hail Satan." I'm like, yeah, this is lovely. I do want to say. The horror officially has its own skybeam, and that skybeam is characters smashing objects into their faces or smashing their faces into objects, creating bloody, pulpy messes. We have it here. We had it in Talk to Me. We have it in the trailer for Smile 2. And I'm sure there's a half a dozen other instances. I'm like, whoever was cribbing off of whom, you got to stop. Because if we're going to be seeing this in horror movies for the next 3 years or whatever, I'm out. Let's talk about Manhunter.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
I was just going to say with Longlegs, I talking to my other panel, apparently the sense of humor in central Wisconsin is a big one, because whenever Nick Cage was on screen, first people were creeped out by him at the very beginning, and then they were laughing when he was on screen. There was audible chuckles and snickers when he was in the car, and even when he was in the convenience store, and later on as well, there was actually some chuckles because he was Rage Cage there, and we've seen it so much that it was literally a joke. It's been a meme forever, and when that meme comes to life on a screen that's supposed to be scary, we were chuckling. We were all laughing.
Hey, Mark, at least you didn't have any bees in the car.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like at one point when we get to the convenience store and you have the teenage girl and he comes up and he kind of does that, all that, and it's like, I am the teenage girl. I'm like, Dad, that weird guy's bothering me again. And I'm like, yeah, girl, yeah. I don't know why they did this Tiny Tim, Sally Kirkland thing with his face that I don't really think is.
Poor Sally Kirkland.
I mean,
thank God she's dead.
I mean, I love her, but it's like when they kept showing more of his face, I was like, why does he look from the profile like Sally? Like, I'm sorry. I just think that wasn't, I think if they just less is more, if they hadn't shown his face there, if they
never show his face. Don't ever.
or just
there's
when
nothing
he's
with
smashing it and then the nose comes, if they had just done that. But then I also got annoyed with the whole thing that it's like the FBI can't figure out how it's like these, Longlegs is doing this, but there's no trace evidence and all that stuff yet. And again, spoilers, everybody, spoilers. When you find out that it's the mom and that she goes in and she's seeing all these murders and then she gets to her car and she does this and she's covered in blood. I'm like, hold on, trace evidence. So let me get this straight. You are covered in someone else's blood, covered. So that when you do this, it's like, yet there's no trail from the house of the victims, like a good 200 feet away to your car.
Yeah.
On multiple levels, there's multiple times this is done that you see how she's acting, and I'm like, okay, FBI, now I don't have faith in you.
Well, that's because
you can't have any of this in any of the crime scenes. Then it's like, because that's supposed to be a huge factor, is that there's no, it's like, how did he do this? We can't find any footprints or fingerprints or any other thing. It's like, well, then how'd she get all? Did she like carry a bucket and then throw it on her? Like, what are you talking about?
The man downstairs came upstairs after she left and cleaned up the entire.
Yeah, haven't you ever heard of the devil is in the details? The
devil
devil went and took the details from the forensic scenes. He cleans up well, and she took the dolls with her afterwards too. And no, the long exposition we got involving describing her mom opened up even more holes in this film. Like I said, up until he smashes his face, this film had me. I was into it, actually. I was enjoying it because I'm like, while we have seen some of these elements before, I'm like, this is a creepy kind of procedural. I'm really curious of where you're going to go with it. I was digging the Lee character, her young, but still figuring it out. And then they take this supernatural direction and then start talking about how her mom was at every murder. And it just opened up so many holes and so many questions that by the end of it, I'm like, you had it going,
Yeah, it's the same. It's very similar to where we're with Maxine. Also in 1992, 93, whenever we're at, they don't have GPS. Yeah. How did the FBI know exactly which dirt road Nick Cage was going to be waiting for a bus on with his 2 suitcases?
I would love to know what's in the suitcases too. It's like, dude, where are you going? Like, I mean,
probably doll making materials or weird orbs that are never explained. But no. So back to Manhunter. Yeah, I think this movie has everything I was looking for in Longlegs, and it makes me wonder, like, I know people don't like watching quote unquote old movies, and there's no appetite for figuring out where a lot of these cliches come from, but I look at a movie like Manhunter and I think, well, there's no reason to make Longlegs, and I feel like Oz Perkins might have been wrestling with that whole Silence of the Lambs kind of paradigm, and like, how do I make this interesting? Well, it was interesting 3 decades ago, so do something else, bring something new that's not ridiculous, that's not like choose your own subgenre of, we've got the psychic, we've got the FBI procedural, we've got killer psychic possessed dolls, we've got the devil worship, whatever, and just do something that makes sense on a base level. Jeff, you mentioned it, the script is so smart. I mean, it's based on Thomas Harris's novel, so it's got that going for it, but there are so many avenues where they could have cheaped out and changed the source material. I haven't read the book, but you can dumb down a great novel. Happens all the time in the translation of the screen. But we don't, the movie's 2 hours and 1 or 2 minutes long, and I don't think we see Frances Dollarhide, the Tooth Fairy, until the movie's at least half over. The rest of it, and Seven kind of played with this gimmick back in the mid 90s, where it was 2 cops and they were finding the crime scenes, the aftermath, and it was all about like, let's open this door and see what grotesque body awaits us. Here, the crime scenes have already been cleared out of the bodies. The most you'll get is like, bloodstains on the carpet and the walls, and it's still pretty chilling. But you've got this troubled cop who, over the course of the film, it's revealed why he's so troubled and distant from his family and why he doesn't want to go back into this line of work, even though he's sort of the best in the business. And the big reveal happens in a really touching scene in a grocery store where he's talking to his semi-estranged son. He's right there on the border, on the edge with his son and his wife. Like, is he going to lose them? And he explains, to a preteen boy what happened to him as far as like confronting, the darkness that was, Hannibal Lecter and why he's got to go and try and help these new families. I mean, the similarities between this and Longlegs are great. You start with a ticking time bomb. I mean, you've got the full moon, which the Manhunter, the Tooth Fairy killer kills on the full moon. And in Longlegs, it's is it also the full moon or something like that?
It's the birthday.
Birthday, yeah, the
14th,
14th, right? That's
14th.
right. So they're kind of working forward towards that. You've got killers who specifically go after families. So there are all these connections, and I'm glad I watched Manhunter after, because to me it was a palate cleanser. If I'd watched this movie before, I probably would have given in to my instinct, which unfortunately is kicking in with a lot of movies I'm seeing nowadays, partially because I'm paying for them, is to get up and walk out. And unfortunately, at the end of most of these movies, I think if I weren't talking about them with you fine folks, I probably would have left. It's really dispiriting. But for Manhunter, I watched this on my laptop at home. I'd never seen it before. I've seen Silence of the Lambs a few times. For some reason, I thought Manhunter was a TV movie. But I think, Jeff, to your point, I guess this didn't do very well in '86 when it came out. So to me, it was just kind of lost to time. But I watched it, and I was completely enthralled. And it made me realize that I'm glad that I hadn't seen it when I met Tom Noonan at a horror convention, 10 years ago or whatever it was. He was promoting House of the Devil, Ty West. If I'd known he was in Manhunter, I probably would have geeked out even more on him than in that performance. Because he was also in the Monster Squad and RoboCop 2. I mean, he's a great
Heat. He was in Heat,
actor.
of course.
Heat, yeah.
Oh, that's right, Heat. In this movie, he brings something, and this is partially the script, but partially the acting that you mentioned, Jeff. It's the script. Because the big reveal of his character is he's, interrogating this tabloid newspaper reporter that he's captured, and there's no music, there's no crazy fancy editing. It's just two people in a room, and this one guy is in this kind of wheelchair and he can't move, and he's scared to death, and he keeps closing his eyes, and the guy's like, "Open your eyes, or I'm going." Open your eyes, or I'm going to staple them to your forehead. Very matter of fact, very almost like a whisper. And then there's that horrifying moment of the lunge, and you say, okay, now it's on. We understand who we're dealing with. But we don't understand who we're dealing with because there's this whole subplot where he falls in love with Joan Allen's character. Unlike the character from Silence of the Lambs, who is a complete freak who lives in a basement and doesn't really interact with people except to go out and kidnap them, our character, Francis Dollarhide, has a job. He's very awkward, but he's a high-functioning serial killer who's out among people, and he works with this blind lady who takes an interest in him. They have sex. There's this whole like romantic thing, and if it weren't for this deranged killer's perception that a coworker who gave her a lift home one night walked her up to her door and took a piece of pollen out of her eye that he caught, he sees this from across the street in a van and imagines them having a passionate makeout session, and that sends them over the edge. You think this movie is going to end like all these movies end. There's going to be the big thing they're working towards, the ticking clock. The killer's going to go into the house and attack the family, and the cop's going to swoosh in, and it's all going to be that. No, this is about a showdown at the killer's house where he's, or is it her? He took her back to his house eventually, because at one point when he shows up to her apartment, we think that he's going to kill her, that she shows up later, she's kind of captured by him. It's, at every turn, this movie makes the smarter decision. It makes the surprising decision. You want to talk about atmosphere. This is a film that I think didn't have to try hard, because so many movies that came after this and after Silence of the Lambs and after the great thrillers of the 90s thought that they had to way overcompensate in order to drive things home with fancy editing, with jump scares, with scary music, and it really you don't. I mean, this is a Miami Vice slasher movie thriller that isn't so much a slasher movie, but it's also thrilling, and it's not 80s in the sense that we think of 80s movies. It's what Maxine had for the first hour and a half that it lost in the last half hour, and I was completely enraptured. And I have no time for Longlegs now. After I completely wrote the movie off as the credits roll on Manhunter.
Well, it's funny too, because Michael Mann has become a director, heralded for a number of things, everything from Last of the Mohicans, which is a historical period piece, to The Insider, which is a character study, which also has a great deal of tension and arguably the last great performance from Al Pacino, and just incredible performances from everybody from Christopher Plummer and Russell Crowe, as you'd expect, to Gina Gershon as one of the CBS executives and lawyers who runs afoul of Mike Wallace in it. Mike, try Mr. Wallace. But here he did a movie which is, a little bit of horror, a little bit of thriller, a very good source material, but that script is there. And I also think his direction, kind of similar to Osgood Perkins, who's been getting raves for his direction, Mann did a great deal of mood. There's just this quiet sort of menace throughout it, and it's there in the electronical score. It's there in the dark blue lighting. Sometimes you can't see things really well. He carries that into Will's house, which has this sort of sexy, shabby chic kind of 80s quality to it, and yet it's creepy because it's matching a lot of the coloring that you've seen in some of the scarier things. I also have to say, even as a procedural, how ballsy of Thomas Harris, of Michael Mann, of the filmmakers here, they keep showing those home movies over and over and over again. And it's almost like daring us to say, guys, what do they have in common? Who would be the processor of this? And it's just there. And it's kind of its own detective sort of thing that Holmes or Agatha Christie would always put into the prose, and daring us to see if we found it. And I also think that, again, it's an interesting contrast. And this has become sort of a parlor game for film critics and viewers. But you've got Anthony Hopkins, who won the Oscar and defined the character and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, Brian Cox, who just approached it as like, "Oh, Will, I could help you out with that. Do you want to give me your phone number?" And that's how he looks. And he looks like just like kind of a serious coworker. And it's like, no, I don't. And you wonder. No wonder Will Graham had a little trouble getting away from that, because it was, the evil as the face of banality almost.
Well, the other thing is, Cox looks, he's got the slick, dark back hair, not back hair, the slick, hair. Black, dark. I can't. You said it, Jeff.
Yeah.
We get it. Yeah.
He looks kind of sleazy, but still. And I can't put myself in the head of someone from 1986 who hadn't seen Anthony Hopkins play this character, but there is a danger and an edge to him that is more genteel by the time we get to Hopkins. So when we find out that toilet paper message that he had written to the Tooth Fairy was essentially Will Graham, the FBI agent the profiler who's tailing him, it was his home address with a message that says "kill them all," meaning his family. I'm like, wow, I did not expect that from Hannibal Lecter. Not that I wouldn't, but it is a level of edge and meanness that we don't quite get. I mean, at the end of Silence of the Lambs, he of course is, getting off. He's escaped, and I think he's going after Dr. Chilton, and so he's going to go kill that guy, but we don't like him. And the other thing,
and they even talked about he wouldn't come after. Clarice says, "Oh, he wouldn't come after me. He would consider it to be." In bad taste or an insult or something like that. And, where really Clarice should be frightened that he would come after her, because the whole idea of him wanting to go after Will Graham is Will Graham bested him. He caught him. And Clarice kind of caught him in a way too,
Right. Well, and that's the other thing I liked about this movie is we get the Chilton character, but he's not he's a very, very minor character. I think he has one scene, maybe two, but he's just the head of this clinic that has Lecter in it, and he's not an asshole. Like I think it was Anthony Held was the he played him in 1990. Right. It's such a delicious little weasel that it's a different take. And again, it's kind of, I almost recommend watching Silence of the Lambs and then watching Manhunter as the prequel, because it completely recalibrates what you expect from these characters. One thing we have a comment from Petty. I was wondering when he'd swoop in here, Petty. Thank you. And thank you for the generous donation, sir. Hello, everyone. Manhunter with William Peterson himself from To Live and Die in L.A. My dad loved this movie. It's interesting you say that. I have seen parts of To Live and Die in L.A., and I watched those parts with my dad when I was way too young. I've never watched the entire thing, but it was one of his favorite movies. I don't know if my old man actually ever saw Manhunter. He never talked to me about it, but yeah, connections abound tonight. I also want to pull over and talk about some connections. I was piecing this together, much like a psychic FBI agent might.
Did you have the big wall with all of the strings sort of converging?
No, but I'm going to do the thing you're never supposed to do on a video podcast, is hold up pieces of paper. But I have lots of Post-its. Let's see. So we've got Joan Allen was in Manhunter. Nicolas Cage was in Longlegs. And they both appeared in 1986 in Peggy Sue Got Married.
Yes.
And yeah, those are both 1986 movies. Both killers target families. Silence of the Lambs and Longlegs. Yeah, they've got that I kind of mentioned that ambiguous gendered serial killer with the red lit layer. It's fun to think about these things. Also, Tom Noonan was in House of the Devil, which was directed by Ty West, who also did Maxine, which we're talking about as being a disappointment on the similar plane as Longlegs. You'd think that we came up with this, but I swear, folks, it's all just a coincidence.
And Billy Peterson took his profiler role and turned it into a scientific profiler when he starred in CSI, which was one of the biggest shows of 20 years ago.
And is it still going on?
Yeah, it's still going on.
Well, NCIS, by basically sort of an offshoot of that, yeah, it's become the franchise for CBS, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
Katie, what were you saying?
Oh, well, and, we were talking about the Chicago connection. Joan Allen, was doing stuff with Steppenwolf. So is William Peterson. You've got both of the Farina and Franz.
Noonan's from Chicago, too.
Yeah, all the Chicago thing. And one of the things about Manhunter
Stephen Lang
that is so unlike any other serial killer film is you have the antagonist of Dollarhide and you have the protagonist of Will Graham. At some point, Will Graham, one of the reasons why he had to stay away from his family is because he got so into Lecter's head that he kept thinking about all that stuff. And he was, I can't go that route and stuff. So when he was doing the stuff with Dollarhide, at the end, when he visits the house of the people, he just wants to say, and he realizes who the next victims are going to be. It's like he has to see them so he doesn't, he can't make them the victims. And then you have Dollarhide, and this shows, this is a film that actually shows a serial killer as a human. He has compassion. He has tenderness. Mm-hmm. Like you said, he made love to this woman who he cared about. He's gentle with her. It's just so sweet when she's outside and he's like, "Are you okay?" and stuff. It's like you don't see that ever in a film about a serial killer. And then, obviously he turned to the monster. So you see the fact that Will Graham, he knows he has to hone everything in and step away with it so he doesn't become a monster. And then you see Dollarhide, have that little bit of human until he has go that, and then it does the other thing. But then I love this version of this film more than Red Dragon, because I feel like in Red Dragon, Ralph Fiennes, but there was too much with Dollarhide. And with this, it's like, I don't know, this Manhunter to me kind of felt like it was something from the 70s, just with the fact that you don't have the overly attractive people doing all of these jobs. That it's like, these are character actors. These are actors that are doing this because of the talent and the grit and all that stuff. And now in Red Dragon, everyone's so damn pretty. I mean, everybody's pretty. And I don't know. I mean, even with his messed up teeth, Ray Fiennes is still freaking fine. He's still fine. I'm sorry. Like, he would have gotten some stuff in St. Louis at that thing. Dollarhide, Tom Noonan, no, that's a hard no. But Ray Fiennes doing that, I don't know. I just thought it was a little too much. So I love Manhunter more than Red Dragon.
I don't think Mann gets credit enough for it either, too, because in most of the scenes where you would present to somebody, okay, you're going to go visit Hannibal Lecter. He's the guy that you caught him, but he turned you kind of, you had to turn yourself into a sanitarium. And this is the first time you're going to be visiting him. And, arguably what Jonathan Demme did worked very well in Silence of the Lambs, but you go into this dungeon that is all bricks and like crazy people one next to each other. It's like something out of the late 18th century Jack the Ripper East London sane asylums, where people were just chained to the walls and hopefully they would die before we'd have to feed them next time. And then Hannibal Lecter is in this glass one, so it's different, and he's kind of effete and well mannered and well behaved and all this. But I love the fact here that Mann looked at that and said, okay, I'm not going to go for that. I'm going to put them in this bright white light, this clean cell. He's in, slippers and this white thing, and he looks kind of regular Joe. But then he said, how do I make this creepier? Two ways. One is I'm going to direct it to not be creepy at all. It's just almost kind of matter of fact, and that makes it so much creepier. But I also love the fact that somehow, somewhere along the line, he and his cinematographer and production designer said, let's have them be a little too close to each other. Like, he's sitting there, and I think it's like from me to my laptop away, there's a glass wall or, the partitions and stuff, but it's a small little place that he's talking to him in. So it's just a little too close for comfort. And that playing sort of reminded me of what I think we were at least I was trying to give Perkins a little credit for, is playing with the spatial relationships and the stuff around them. And they're always sort of isolated as lonely, or maybe potentially something's going to come out after them. Like, and we saw that when the families were attacked and stuff, it would come in from the side and we weren't sure what was going on. But here he just does this wonderful spatial relationship, which adds so much menace to it.
Well, yeah. And the cell is a perfect example of that, because I have to go back and watch it again, but it took me a while to realize that there was actually a glass partition. It wasn't just the white bars.
Right.
When we first see it and we see that, Graham comes in and sits down in this chair, I'm like, that chair is like arm's length from those bars. Lecter could reach out if he wanted to, and they were like, oh, there's some layer of protection there. But yeah, it is very effective. Also, in terms of atmosphere, like in the climax when, Farina and Peterson jump out of the plane and go right into the cop cars, and the cop cars are speeding through the night to the Dollarhide house. Like, it almost feels like they're floating through fog with these police sirens. It's so, it's intense, but it's also otherworldly. Mm-hmm. And I gotta say, it's like straight out of a comic book, but in the best way, when you've got William Peterson running in slow motion and coming through that plate glass window, and Dollarhide getting ready for him, and then immediately slashing him and throwing, like, body flipping him over into that fridge. I'm like, I've never seen anything like this before. And then he kind of freaks out. He takes on the cops, and you see like brain matter exploding out of the back of the head. It's all very tense, but then it's also much like Silence of the Lambs. It's over when you think it's supposed to be just getting ramped up. And there is that great bit of, it's highfalutin symbolism, but it works. Dollarhide dies on the kitchen floor, and there's blood seeping out that kind of forms like blood angel wings underneath him. What he was trying to ascend to become, assume the powers of God. Everything about this movie works, except some of the William Peterson or Graham character talking to himself got a little bit, like, you wanted them to see it, didn't you? You son of a bitch. I'm like, I don't know. That's a little
and then why don't they do it as voiceover? You can say anything in your head, but when they actually have to say it out loud, it's like in The Net when Sandra Bullock is on the computer and she's saying every last thing that she's doing. It's like, can't we just do this as a voiceover? Does it have to be said? I hate that.
Well, I can, as far as in defense of The Net, talking to yourself out loud. talking to yourself out loud is an occupational hazard. All IT people talk to themselves out loud when they're figuring stuff out. So in defense of that, I will say that is more natural, because we will talk to ourselves while we're figuring stuff out, which if there's usually no one around when we're trying to work on the problem, so it's not a big deal. But when you're starting to try to figure that out and you're talking out loud and there's someone standing next to you and they're like, what? And they're like, oh, and then you have to realize, oh, I've got to do this internally now. So as far as that goes, yeah.
All
but
right,
no,
I'll give you that one, Mark.
Cinema verite from the net. I love it, Mark.
Wow. I'm going to have to reconsider that movie now.
William Peterson, I felt like he needed to get that out. He didn't want to
Yes.
keep anything in anymore, because it's like he had to take a break. He had to be, in an asylum himself to like regain. So I think that's just him like, all right, let's put this out there. I don't want to keep it inside. But what you were talking about, that scene where he goes through the window, I was going to say my favorite use of Inagata Devita besides The Simpsons. Like, I mean, you just saying that, it just, because I haven't seen this film in forever, but that just brought that back. And I'm like, oh, yeah.
It's
That is
so
such a
badass,
good
yeah.
scene.
But it's fascinating too, because one of the core points we were talking and ripping on in Longlegs is you don't really see really shrewd, sort of enlightened FBI behavior, and if you do, it's because she's connected to it, which is a little bit of a cheat. I think it's very interesting that they spend the time that they do in this movie following Will doing his procedure, doing his going in there at night. It's creepy. He's trying to figure it out. It's scary as fuck, and he's just trying to, and like, oh, you put the mirrors in their eyes because you wanted them to see you. Whether he says son of a bitch or not, it's like, damn, like, see, there he figured it out, and we see it in real time. And, he's going up, figuring out, oh, you went up in the thing so you could see them and watch them and they wouldn't see you. I think all that Holmesian, stuff is very well done here. And you see it, and then even you're immersed with him, and it's creepy. You think I feel kind of skeevy about this. No wonder you went crazy.
Well, I think I'm right there with you, Jeff, because as he's going into that first house where the family was killed, and there's like the white sheets in the bedroom, and they're still, splattered with blood, and there's blood everywhere. And yet he's just taking out his tape recorder and making these kind of notes about it. I got the feeling like I want to go make sure all the doors on my house are locked, because I couldn't. And it just kind of speaks more to his character, what all he's been through, that he is so far gone. There's like, yeah, this could be someone in here. Probably not, but whatever. I was stabbed by Hannibal Lecter. And that's the other bit of restraint. I don't know if this is more of a modern filmmaking impulse or if Mann had it in his toolbox when he did it. I'm glad he didn't, if he had thought of it. Where he's recounting how he first busted Hannibal Lecter, and there was sort of a chase at a psychiatrist office, and Lecter came up and stabbed him. A lesser filmmaker would have intercut flashbacks when that is happening and shown us what happened. But no, there's a line earlier on in the film, I think it might have been Stephen Lang's reporter character talking about like how he had been stabbed like by a really long knife, or there was a really big wound or something. It's like, oh, that sounds painful. But when you find out how it happened, it paints the entire picture without having to show you. And the other thing you mentioned, Jeff, about the home movies, in addition to laying it on thick a bit, I suppose, with like, yes, they're trying to tell us it's a photo processor. That's who we're looking for. To me, it was when they're focusing on the home movies of Dollarhide, when he's watching the videos of his next victims.
Yeah.
It's a mom and her kids at the family swimming pool, and she's picking up this 6-month-old child and putting it on like the little floaty raft and everything. To me, and without getting into it and saying, oh, this guy loves to kill kids and cut them up, we never see any bodies of children, but we know what Dollarhide is capable of. And we see a loving mom completely unaware that she's being watched and filmed, and she's just taking care of her family. And it's almost like putting a fast forward on the ticking clock. And it's a detail.
Yeah.
And there's nothing like that in Longlegs. And that's why I'm so I'm getting retroactively frustrated with a movie that I had seen after the one or before the one that I loved.
I'm so jealous that you got. That's amazing that you got to watch this for the first time. Like, honestly, this is the second time. I had a patient today who just said they're watching Blade Runner for the first time tonight, and we're going to talk about it on Monday. And I'm like, you do not know how much I am envious, like, to see that film for the very first time. So for you to see Manhunter for the very first time, that is awesome, because I remember that it was much long time ago. It was a cable staple, so I watched this a lot. But this was a movie that, this was one that really scared me, because it is the fact that it's like you don't know who could come into your house, and the whole thing. It's like, how did you know the dog was there? It's like, how did you know the lock? And it's like, wait, you're looking at these freaking movies. That's Jesus Christ. How did no one get this? And that's, those details that it's like, that could scare the crap out of you.
Whereas in Oz Perkins' hands, it would have been, well, the doll that was in the house was relaying psychic signals through the ball that's in the house. No, but Katie, I got to ask, your friend who's watching Blade Runner tonight, did you pull them over and say, okay, here's the cut you want to watch? Don't just watch
which
Blade
version.
Runner. You got to watch a specific one.
No,
yeah.
He actually asked, like, which one I should watch, and I told him. And then he had actually seen 2049 before that. So he's watching it tonight. I'm like, look, all I have to say is that Blade Runner, that basically set the tone for the next, like, 40 years of what dystopian worlds are going to look like, with the clouds and the rain. There's so much rain in the future. It's so dark. I don't know why it's always raining all the time. And I told him about a thing that I talked to a director that did, I forget what I think it was Lee Winnell. And I told him the movie he did that was set in the future, that I was like, you know what? Thank you that you didn't use that Blade Runner aesthetic. Like, that's one of the things I really liked about this. This is a new look at the future. And he's like, oh, that's because my production designer, she's so young, she's never seen Blade Runner. She had no idea what it was. So
was
it's
this for Upgrade?
Lock her down, make sure she doesn't see any other films, so that we get this brand new look at the future and dystopia from a whole different uncolored view of, like, what it's supposed to look like. Because I love the fact that it wasn't raining 24/7. I don't know why it has to rain so much in the future.
Pollution. It's pollution.
It's really pollution makes it rain?
Yeah.
Does it rain a lot in LA though? Because I always thought that LA was so hazy and it would be.
So wait, was the movie you were talking about with Leo Winnell, was that for Upgrade?
Yes.
Yes, I talked to him for that one too. We were probably in the same press, I guess, appointment. Okay, so I do want to pull over because we're running late, which I love, but these things are going to be 3 hours long at some point. Not that I'm complaining, but I do need to sleep. Comments. Agitation Free says, I love Michael Mann. Manhunter and Thief are so good. Micah Monroe is great too. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much, Agitation Free. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, speaking of Micah Monroe, Katie, I think you and I are similar on this, but we both like It Follows, and I think she was terrific in Watcher too, which, she's kind of becoming a little bit of a known entity, I suppose, a modern scream queen, but she gives very, very good performances in those movies, and I think they're better movies too. If there's a sleeper out there that I would recommend to anybody watching your show, it would be Watcher. I think that's a very clever, very interesting, moody film. About isolation, about foreign land, about being out of your comfort zone, and some very interesting directorial points of view on it too, that the female director writer brings to it.
Yeah, Chloe Kuno, I believe, is director of Watcher, who is amazing. Yeah. I love everything about that film, like the minor details, everything about it is just so aesthetically pleasing. And Micah Monroe, I honestly think that's Micah Monroe's best performance. The only one that I kind of felt she was off on was a film with Bill Skarsgård and Keira Sedgwick and Jeffrey Donovan. I think something about the Bill Skarsgård and Micah Monroe were a couple, and they broke into Keira Sedgwick and Jeffrey Donovan's house. And I don't know. To me,
I missed that one.
that was weak. It was not the best, and I didn't think she did the best. But you know, it's the character that she was playing, so that's it. But everything else, I think she's just like hit it out of the park. Honestly, I mean, from It Follows again to watch her, and even this. I mean, I liked her in this. I thought, you know, she's an odd duck. She's a female FBI agent in the early 90s. Weren't that many. I mean, even watching some stuff that documentaries about crime and things, there really are so few. I think about 3 that they had in certain areas. And even then, you know, welcome to the 80s and patriarchy and all that stuff. But she's an odd character. She's supposed to be an odd character. And I think she did a good job with that.
I mean, there's odd care. I get it.
I know.
Much like we can't figure out what horror lane we're going to stay in. It's just it's too much seasoning in the soup.
Oh, like, I agree.
If you're going with the plot, make her a normal person who's troubled, but not this fucking weird. All right. So Petty says a realistic movie about hacking is Who Am I? No system is safe. But for those who are not into the subject, it becomes difficult. I don't know that one. Mr. Robot series is good too. I've heard good things about that. Plus, it's got Christian Slater in it. Hard Harry for life. Laughing, kind of goofy face emoji. I like that too, Betty. Thank you.
Get glasses on. Is that supposed to be? Well, 3 of us have glasses.
Wait, hold on.
Yes, villains. Thank you.
Okay.
There you go.
Nice. There
Villains
you go.
is the one with Bill. She's in a small Amazon one called Significant Others. That's a pretty good horror film too. Okay. Thank you. Agitation Free. When did Watcher come out? What I missed that. That's totally off my radar.
2022. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
You can watch it on Amazon Prime.
All right. I might just watch Manhunter
Shudder,
again.
I believe, too. Yeah, I think that's Shudder.
I will say Manhunter did something that only the rarest era of movies does, especially ones that are based on books. It made me want to go out and read the novel. So I'm gonna put that on my list at some point, either this year or next year, maybe even Silence of the Lambs, but definitely Red Dragon, which was the novel that this was based on. I don't know why they changed the name. Does anyone have a beat on why they called it Manhunter instead of Red Dragon?
I think it was the movie Year of the Dragon came out the year before, and they didn't want it associated with sort of what may have been that or some sense of Year of the Dragon, Chinese lore, whatever. Manhunter seemed a little bit more copish, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
I think that's why they did it.
Well, and I think there was like Dragon Slayer. There was that movie with Vanity and
The Last Dragon.
Yes, The Last Dragon. So I feel like there were a lot of dragon movies that had stuff with dragons. So if you have Red Dragon, I think there are probably a lot of people, you know, since there's no trailer, like, you know what? This movie sucked. It's called
I don't think Red Dragon's a good title either.
No dragons in it. F. I give it 1 star. This is dumb. Of course, no one's doing vlogs at that point, so they're just like local TV.
That would have been the letters section in Starlog. Now I
love your Starlog references because I was an avid subscriber to that magazine.
I never subscribed to it, but my dad would always pick it up for me. We'd go to like Walden Books.
Do you remember what the first issue of Starlog was?
Issue number 1? No, I don't.
They rated every single episode of Star Trek, the original series.
Wow.
It was quite. They went deep.
Well, we've gone, I think, pretty deep on these 2 movies, and I'm glad we did. For as much as I didn't like Longlegs, I'm glad, Jeff, that you recommended we do the comparison, because I feel like I've watched a movie that has been a blind spot for decades, but is now one of the films that I'm going to judge other movies by. Fair or unfair, it's just, it gets into my head and I can't let it go. So, but I am going to let you guys go. I appreciate you hanging out and talking Longlegs and Manhunter with me. And any final thoughts on either of these movies as we wrap up?
Well, I know I didn't say much on Manhunter, so but
I'm sorry, Mark. What did you think of Manhunter? I don't know if we got an opinion. We talked about.
Did you not say anything about Manhunter?
I did not
I told you
actually.
we
I
went
did.
too
I
deep
did
on
not
long
really.
legs.
Actually, I didn't at all. I
Well,
let
pull
you
over.
guys
We're going to
go.
talk about it.
No.
We're going to go for another hour.
You're going long. No, look. Manhunter took the approach I wish Longlegs had. Manhunter gives you the first hour, gives you Graham. Second hour, you get more of your killer. You're introduced to him. It's not a mystery of who he is, and you get to see him in action and get to understand him. They could have taken that angle with Longlegs, and I thought they were going to, considering Nicolas Cage's name is in the opening titles, but that he gets maybe 10 minutes of screen time total in, if that, in in Longlegs. I was expecting more. I was expecting more of an approach of her going against him like we had here in Manhunter. Manhunter does the approach better, and I mean it's a solid film. I think I would have enjoyed Longlegs more had it had a script and approach more like Manhunter. While it may have been something that we had seen before, I don't mind that, because many procedurals, and we talked about this, Ian, on the show when we looked even earlier at like 50s, like Nightfall, and we looked at even earlier films. There's been a formula for quite some time, and the reason that formula is still around is because it works. If you structure and give you interesting characters, you can use the same formula, as long as you have interesting characters who might be a bit different, who will keep you intrigued. Manhunter has that. Longlegs has interesting characters. It does nothing with them, in all honesty. They're there, but they don't go anywhere. Mark,
do you only think Manhunter is a solid film? Solid is not a great compliment.
What? It's solid. No, solid's not a great compliment.
It's a solid film. That's what you usually say to films, that it's okay. It's good. It sounds like that, Mark. It's better than that, don't you think?
I would say Longlegs,
No, Manhunter.
Manhunter. Yeah,
Manhunter. You said is a solid film.
It is a solid film.
Better than a solid film, I think.
It's better than a solid film.
I'm trying to get you to say that too. Come on, Mark.
I might have to watch it again. But no, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed Manhunter. But if you want to go back to talking about elements that you have seen in other crime procedurals, it is a bit of that formula, and that's not a bad thing. I think Manhunter is still a really, really good film. If you had your choice between watching the two, I would say Manhunter. I would also say Manhunter influenced probably one of my favorite shows, Hannibal.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Manhunter, the movie, show. The performance. Yeah. If you look at William Peterson's Graham in here, that he took a lot from William Peterson in his portrayal in Hannibal. I think there's a lot of mannerisms and a lot of things with him. Hannibal is like an extended version of Manhunter, the movie. Mm-hmm. It feels more like that. After watching Manhunter again, having seen that whole series, I'm like, wow, this is a great companion piece to Hannibal the series. Mm-hmm. If you watched Manhunter and Hannibal the series, those two go together better than Hannibal the series and Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, yeah, I'm glad we got your thoughts on
no, it's fine. I was loving the.
They were solid thoughts, Mark.
I didn't want to interrupt. No, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Now we're gonna close out. Betty, you got one more comment here. We're going to breeze right past it because this could be an entire show. Off-topic alert. With what happened to the friend Donald, will there be a movie or at least a documentary? He's saved by the position of the head. I don't know if you know this, Petty, and I don't think you were here for the beginning of the show, but yeah, I found out what happened in Pennsylvania earlier this week. Like seconds before the lights went down to watch Longlegs. So like, what's on Twitter? I don't want to watch these commercials anymore. I saw that. I'm like, okay. So that kind of like it didn't help watching Longlegs. But I will say there is actually a movie. I don't know if it's called The Apprentice, but it's the one with Sebastian Stan. Yeah. It's coming out as Donald Trump. Soon. It's not going to have that, of course, because it's already in the can. But yes, there are going to be movies and biopics. Probably not for another few years, I would imagine. Because Oliver Stone made his W movie while Bush was still in office. Is that right?
Are you kidding? In the
Yes.
joys of social media, instant video, and you've got a camera in your pocket, there's people already shooting documentaries about all of this.
Yeah, go on TikTok. They've already got dozens upon dozens of conspiracy theories and everything else on it.
And YouTube has documentaries as well and such that people have done themselves, whether or not good or bad. If you're talking about like official Hollywood ones, yeah, I'm sure they've been already in the works and they're just picking a time to release them. I just find it funny they're doing The Apprentice and we're getting Reagan, so it's going to be two movies competing to see who can do bad impersonations of famous people. But anyway.
Well, I haven't seen Sebastian Stan's Trump. I have seen like a couple of stills of him, and he looks, I can see him as a 1980s version of that, kind of. But okay, lastly, on some Wednesday in the future, will the panel cover Fly Me to the Moon? Seems like a good option to see with the wife and hopefully have a foot massage. Okay, let's see. I don't know. I haven't seen Fly Me to the Moon. Has anyone else here seen this new Channing Tatum and
I was possibly
ScarJo movie?
I was going to possibly go see it this weekend yet because I was curious about it because it felt like it was a spirit, like a wag the dog spirit of sorts in its concept. And I've run out of time lately, but I was going to possibly go see it. And I haven't. I didn't even know about it until I saw a trailer of it 2 weeks before it was supposed to come out. I'm like, wait, what is this? ScarJo, what? What? But then again, then I just recently saw the trailer for Smile 2, and the only reason I knew about Smile 2 a little bit earlier is because my wife had the schedule of the rest of the year of films coming out because she was working with the winery and possibly getting ads for playing it before, the movies showing that. But I saw that and I wait, Smile 2? What? And then I saw the trailer like 2 weeks later and I'm like, oh, Smile 2. Right. Okay.
Yeah. To me, it looked like Smile meets Vox Lux, that Natalie Portman movie from a few years ago. But I don't know. All right. Okay. This will be the last one for the evening. Petty, very interested in your opinions on such a heinous act. Well, we're not going to talk about Smile 2 until it comes out. Yes. Oh, I see what you said there. So, no, that is a loaded conversation for another time, another venue. Jeff, I did not mean it that way, you son of a. But I'll tell you what, Petty. Since you asked the question earlier, and
we'll play that one by ear.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
Stop.
Wait, what?
Oh, all right. Okay. I'm getting back to the question before this about Fly Me to the Moon. Since you paid to put in that comment, Petty, I will tell you this: when Fly Me to the Moon comes to video on demand, I know this doesn't help much with your idea of a date night with a foot massage, but maybe you can stay in and rent it. I'll check it out, and maybe if I can get anyone else to watch it with me and talk about it, we'll talk about it then. Maybe with another pairing of I don't know, Red Dragon. But anyway, we're gonna leave it there, gang.
Foot massage.
Huh?
Pulp Fiction.
We've
foot fucking master.
Yeah. Oh, now I'm thinking about Channing Tatum saying that. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for hanging out, for talking about these two very interesting, very different, and yet very similar movies. I am always, as always, Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat, Katie Glidewell, the bald in front, aka the blonde in front, Jeff York of the Establishing Shot and Pipeline Artist, Mark the Movie Man Krawcheck, aka the Movie Hunter. Of the Spoiler Room and Special Mark Productions. Hold on a second. Thank you, Ian. You're the best. Thank you, Petty. You're the best. And bye. The classic bye. We'll catch you next week, hopefully, Petty. Oh, next week, what are we talking about? What am I probably talking about by myself? Because all y'all are going to be watching the preview of the biggest movie of the summer yet to come. I won't give anything away. But no, Monday night, because I'm going to be out of town on Tuesday and Wednesday next week. Monday night, doing a live stream. It might be 5 minutes long. It might be 45 minutes long. It depends on who shows up. 8 p.m. Central. Going to be talking about Twisters. Not the fun family home game, but the remake of sorts of the 1996 movie. This one starring Glenn Powell. And if it were not for Hitman, I would not be going to the theater to see Twisters. But anyway. join us back here. If you like the live stream, please like and subscribe and all that good business. And be sure and check out the rest of Earth's Mightiest Critics, my lovely panel, and the panelists who also join us occasionally. All their information is down below. Until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thanks very much. Take care. And yeah, make sure you lock your doors because it's getting crazy out there in terms of like manhunting and long legging and whatever. But yeah, stay safe. It's a weird way to end the show.